So very quickly, I'm presenting myself. I am lead of solutions at Sensedia, more than 18 years with experience in APIs, and also speaking in events, both nationally and internationally. First of all, when we talk about governance, what most companies say is, or what they think actually is true, is that everything is under control in terms of governance, that they don't need governance, or even that they have all of the APIs for services and everything is running 100% under control. So if we ask the architect to take a picture of our integration architecture, what will we get? Something looking like this, right? Which is the reality of practically all companies. But then they say, well, we are here modernizing our architecture. Everything is going to be very modern. We're going to use cloud, microservices, and everything is going to be okay, everything in a controlled environment. Right? If you remember the previous picture, each point was a monolith. Imagine now that we're going to an architecture of microservices in which each blue dot is a microservice, in which I'm moving to serverless, in which I have many different functions. So look at the size of the granularity that we're reaching. So that first picture tends to just get worse and worse. And then obviously I have all the complexity of having all these components, and they are all going to need integration between them. They're going to need APIs. They need to be integrated. They're connected. If here we had almost no links, here I'm scaling it. And can you imagine what it's going to be here? So this is the reality. This is where we're heading towards in software architecture. And it's also the scenario that we're going to have to face and manage all these dots. Now we're going to improve because we are going to start with an API strategy. Then obviously I have the APIs here, very sexy, right? The developer, but then here I have a back-end service that looks just like this, nothing sexy. So if you're only dealing with APIs and you move to opening your APIs, you're going to have APIs that are going to be used not only for your digital channels, but also by partners. When you're in an open banking strategy, for example, more and more if you're opening, you're going to have to deal not only with all that complexity that we've already seen for dots, but also you're going to have to deal with the complexity of 4,000 developers. Not 4,000. Cielo, they have almost 8,000 developers. So how can we manage all these developers? And then I have 300 APIs and another 1,000 services over in the other end. So here we have this complexity that is just getting bigger and bigger, and we're moving towards this complexity. And I'm modernizing my architecture, which means that my complexity is going to drop. No, I'm getting more and more complexity. It's just the other way around. So governance is a topic. I need to know how to manage these integrations, these APIs, manage the developers, and what is it that we need to worry about with. First, we get some questions here. Who are they? Where do they live? No. Let's go back to serious questions. What are the questions that we need to worry about? Which are the APIs that are in production? I need to know, because if I'm going to evolve an API, if I'm going to reuse an API, if I want to just monitor it, I need to have visibility. I need to know which are the APIs that are in production. An API that was implemented in production with minimum criteria of quality. How do I know that the guy didn't, in the middle of the dawn, implement an API in production? Who has never done this? Do APIs need a new version? Of course. These are living beings. They evolve. They have new versions to meet the business needs. Which are the APIs I have? What are the versions? Where are they? And who's using which version? I need to have all of this information. What is the impact of changing an API that's in production? That's important. If I'm going to create a new version of the API, who's going to be impacted? How do I run a regression test so I can guarantee? Well, at the end of the day, governance is very well connected to bringing visibility to whatever is happening. And who's going to be impacted during this journey? Here we're talking about, well, I need to worry about this new governance, all these assets, but who needs to worry about it? Who are the interested parties? Well, it's operation, obviously. That's there. It's their everyday life. And are worried about keeping these APIs in production with quality. They have SLAs to follow. And there's obviously a developing team that wants to accelerate the development, but to accelerate the development, I might need to reuse an API. Do I know if this API still exists? Can I reuse it? And then security. We need to talk about this more and more. But first, before that, if you have APIs that are already being used by your digital channels, you have to have a determined level of security, because it's leaving your safe environment, and you need to guarantee that all your APIs and your digital channels have a minimum of security. And then if you have open banking, open payments, as we've seen today, well, we need to worry more and more about security. So what's the level of security? And if it's open, you need even more security. I need to worry about a series of topics that need to be met. Now, if we talk about business, what does the business want? The business wants to be able to deliver new models, and they're interested in governance, and it's governance that's going to help bring more agility for the development. And then there are the needs. There's a series of needs that we need to worry about. I'm not going to go topic by topic, obviously, but from back office in the production, when I guarantee the SLAs and so on. There's a whole series of needs that address some of these topics. Some of them are common, you can see here. There are some columns here that they're not going towards business, okay? Business is one part, security takes another. But these are the worries that we have when we talk about adaptive governance. First, we have to understand the scenario. Then we have to know what is the strategy, so we know what we're going to focus on.
Well, we saw that interest areas are areas related to security and business. So, what are the benefits that business seek when they start using adaptive governance? The impacts of governance from the point of view of business are basically three basic aspects. They want to They want time to market. They want to be faster. We saw in the previous lectures that a project cannot last a year. It has to last weeks, months, but not years. So the positive aspects are time to market, cost. We are undergoing an economic crisis here in Brazil, and there's also risk mitigation. We want to evolve with as little risk as possible. And the main and fundamental goals are in each step of the life cycle of an API. So we have to discover things at a faster pace. So which APIs am I going to use? Then we have to build or reuse in a faster pace in this construction stage. And then once it is active, we need to continuously manage and update those APIs. So if we think how we could do this, we could focus in on the discovery stage. If the operations business team is seeking time to market, how can they do this? Here I'm talking about outcomes, okay? So we need capabilities that address time to market. If we use it, we are going to be able to save money, and we are going to reduce cost and time to market. Another aspect, risk. How do we reduce risk? By analyze impacts. So what is impact and analysis? It is the ability governance has to address benefits. So during discovery, we have those three aspects. In the construction stage, we can, for example, ensure good development practices in order to reduce, once again, risk. We can ensure quality standards to be more agile. So if there's a quality API, I will have, for example, time to market that is better. My partner will be able to consume better. Is the documentation good? Does it have little bugs? And we also need deployment policies. How can I ensure that an open banking API is going to go to production with an encrypting or authentication or token process? So does anyone have, everybody has access to the platform, so anyone can go there and perform a deploy without any risk. So we need security measures. So we also need impact analysis and deploy policies. So we have to address risks. We have to ensure that we have a healthy operation, and this impacts the operation team. And the team uses metrics to evaluate. And then we'll also have a catalog building strategy. We know which area or uses which API, and this makes it easier to reuse APIs and reduces costs. So I'm going to go into detail in a few minutes. Basically, when we talk about governance, we talk about time to market, cost reduction, and risk. Then we have capabilities, which is governance to address those main fundamental goals. So what do we need to do then? Basically, I'm not sharing anything new with you. If you have ever had contact with any type of governance, when we talk about governance, we talk about defining policies, governance policies. For example, which is the reference architecture? What are the standards, the quality standards? It has to be an open API. What are the digital aspect it has to have? Which are the processes? How do I ensure that the processes comply with the policies? We also need people who can be accountable. We need accountability, and we need tools to reduce uncompliance. So let's talk about each of those items with in more detail. So adaptive governance is the ability to determine the necessary styles and the necessary governance styles and mechanisms to meet in an agile way the needs of digital businesses. In the past, we had a huge playbook and all the practices had to be implemented. What we're saying today is that we need minimum governance focused on a specific scenario, that is something that reduces risk, that is focused on fundamental goals. So let's perform governance in a more tailored fashion, something that is adapted to your business. Start small. Let's just create a governance MVP so that we are able to validate the concept of governance, and then we evolve. So how do we create policies, processes, so on and so forth? We had this macro playbook that illustrates, first of all, you need to design a objective. So we are going to start with governance of internal API. So let's perform a governance MVP. So the objective has to be very clear. We have to think of a minimum or maximum scope, or define a roadmap, defining standards, rules, reference architecture, or metrics and processes and methodologies. So you have to define the scope pretty well, and it has to be in line with your strategy and objectives. Our methodology is based on an interview to define scenarios, then we create the practices and apply then on an MVP style. We start with minimal governance and try it out to see how it evolves. So from this area, all the patterns, architecture blueprint, metrics, life cycle guides, setup, everything is created here. And what do we use here? Key concepts, good practices. So here is everything that the market is using. And finally, tools. Once we've defined the policies and processes and then the responsibilities, we need tools to help our daily routine. Let me see. I need help, please.
Aí. Bom,
Well, so there is this initial stage in which you define methodology and processes, so on and so forth. But the most important thing is having the right tools. So these are the capabilities, the governance capabilities. Governance capabilities like reuse, address, they address the positive aspects of governance like time to market and others. So we use tools to help. In terms of reuse, I need certain tools, impact analysis tools, and the capabilities are kind of connected as well. In reuse, the main feature is related to tools. The tools that we use for governance have to offer you features like this, like advanced search. If I'm going to reuse an API, which version is under production? Who is going to be impacted if I reuse? So we need to be able to search by attributes. Sort of version 1.0 of a client who is in a production environment, something that is being used by certain apps. We need tools because we have hundreds of APIs, thousands of developers. So how do I search? How me as a developer can search an attribute? So this is going to give us agility. Impact analysis. Use and dependency map. So do we have fast access to data? For example, I have a customer's API. Am I going to, if I'm going to make it available to a partner, it is a Canon API. What does this mean? I have an operation to obtain client's data, to move it and to insert data. But I just want my partner to read the information. So if there's no visibility, if I don't know which are the visible operations, and if we use this for a partner, we end up having data and metadata that shows the microservices that is behind the API, which is the throughput, what is the quality of this API like, how many mistakes it is currently having, and if I'm gonna make it available for a partner, it will have to be improved. So I start having insights to create a backlog. So if I have a map and visibility of the data, so here's the API, these are the resources, the operations, the backend plans, and here are the apps that are using it. So tools like this help us to perform impact analysis in an easier way. So once again, tools.
Pessoal, padrões de qualidade.
Quality standards. When we talk about quality standards, if we want to reuse an API, we have to be able to measure it. This indicator measures quality. It's 64% of completeness. If I'm going to make it available for partners, I have to improve quality. So we need inputs, we need indicators, and we need tools to ensure quality standards. Development policies.
Políticas de desenvolvimento, né?
Development policies. What is this? We need features like customized workflows. Each stage has its own quality standard. I can define policies such as an API that will only go to production if it goes through development, certification, AP, and production. So this is a workflow that I can create, and it will ensure that we go through those stages. Another one could be an API will only go to production if it achieves 90% of the quality indicators. Catalog. We can, for example, tag. It is a feature that enables you to organize your catalog so that it is adapted to your company. If I have physical customers and I have legal customers, so we can tag types of APIs. If this is an open internal API, this is a partner's API. This API is for ABCD business setting. This API is located in a specific geography: Brazil, Latin America, the USA. So you're able to organize catalogs in a way that you're able to find the APIs fast enough. And lastly, it's metrics, which is interesting for production, but it's also related to the business team.
You have to have practically real-time follow-up to try to get right your errors, so that you can get your SMS, you can get your data. So here I can have for response time, for example, how does this impact? It does impact the digital experience. And what is this experience currently? Do I have visibility? How much time when the guy clicks there? If they have an app for the bank, how long does it take? 5 seconds, 10 seconds to read their report? If I have an API from Beta and I have 5,000 partners, who are the top 5 partners so I can have specific policies and specific contracts for them? Availability. It's important, of course. API has to be 100%. I have to follow up metrics. What is the availability of my API, of my backend? Response time, type of response. I have to know what is my success rate, what is my client rate used by, maybe due to the bad use from the customers. This is all important. So that's it. I wanted to bring to you a governance view, so that once again, just to remember, so the impact for the business is a faster speed, lower cost, less risk mitigation, and these objectives are brought by a series of capabilities like use, quality, and these governance capabilities can tools through search, through a dependency map, can these features address these capabilities? and address the positive impacts. That's what I wanted to show you. A little bit of this governance view and what we have already done for our customers in the time that we've been in business.